everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Neighbors Helping Neighbors podcast, brought to you by the Robertson County Democratic Party. I am your co-host, Kailee, joined by my co-host Morgan. Say hi.
Hello.
We are back for our second week as new co-host of this podcast. We're really excited to be taking this over. So if you missed our episode last week, please go back and listen to it, because we're gonna have some quick updates on last week's episode. But before we get into that, as always, we like to start with just some important dates, things that are coming up, things to be aware of. So March 17th, which is next Tuesday, will be the Robertson County Democratic Party's next just monthly meeting. So more info to come on that. But next Tuesday night is when that is going to be. And then just a reminder that Saturday, March 28th from 2 to 4, we will be having a No Keens protest at the Robertson County Courthouse in downtown Springfield. So hope to see you there. And then a final reminder that this coming Tuesday, so not a lot of time left if you do decide you want to run, but this coming Tuesday at noon is the deadline to submit your petition if you would like to run either for District 7 to run against Matt Van Epps, or for the District 66 House to run against Sabi Kumar. Again, Tuesday at noon, 25 signatures. Please get those in if you're interested in running. As always, we would love to have a candidate to vote for, so we are not stuck with a one option on our ballot come election time. So those are the important updates for upcoming dates, just kind of related to the party, but also wanted to touch on, like I mentioned, our episode last week. We covered a immigration package that the Tennessee state legislature is trying to pass right now, and they were going to have a lot of committee hearings last week on that. A lot of those have been rescheduled for this week, or they were passed with various, amendments, recommendations, so they're having hearings in other subcommittees. So if you can make it this week to go sit in on those sessions, voice your opposition to those bills. We will put all of those specific dates in the description for the episode, but Monday, March 9th, Tuesday, March 10th, and Wednesday, March 11th will be just kind of various hearings on all of those bills. And again, if you want more info on what is in all of those bills, go back and listen to last week's episode. That being said, this week, we want to zoom out a little bit. We know with the immigration package, we really got into some nitty-gritty details, so wanted to zoom out a little bit for this week. And we wanted to talk about just the state of the Democratic Party kind of as a whole, but mostly at a rural level in counties like Robertson County, but then also talk about Robertson County specifically. So I'll hand it over to you. I know you wanted to start more at the national level. So I know you found some interesting data just on kind of identity politics, I guess is almost the best way to describe it.
It's some very, very recent data on voting trends and really how important this rural versus urban divide that we're starting to see manifest is. Like, really starting in 2016, from what we can see, thanks to the election campaign of President Trump and the types of tactics they went for, mainly motivating grievances and motivating a much more nationalistic attitude towards how the party is going to operate. It's really expanded this divide between rural voters and urban voters. And the Democratic Party also hasn't helped that much, that for the last 8 years or so, they have focused more on cities and suburbs than they have more rural areas. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people that have seen the clip of Chuck Schumer going around from years ago stating that for every rural voter that we lose, we will pick up 2 more in the suburbs. Well, it seems like that was a foolish strategy, and that has precipitated down all the way down to Robertson County in District 7. And you can see kind of the same results throughout the nation that you can see in Robertson County in District 7. The main result is that these people aren't so much motivated, Trump supporters and rural voters who have voted for him all 3 times and who have rode with him for the entirety up until this point. they are very much motivated by economic concerns that the Democratic Party does need to lean into. And they have also been motivated by identity concerns. The Republicans have very much leaned into rural America being the real America or the true America. That if you are a rural Republican voter who is very much in with the messaging, in with the culture of current political conservatism, you are being told that you are the real American, that you have the real American values within you. And that seems to be just as big of a motivator as economic reasons. Now, from what the research is looking at, economic reasons do break through in more counties than not. Populist progressive messaging also breaks through. We also looked at some data from the previous special election in District 7 with Afton Bain doing so. And the data was, I know people talk about points and, Trump was up plus 20 points or down this many points. We looked more granularly at the voting record data and found that we can win in District 7 if we appeal more towards rural voting and rural voters. If Afton Bain would have gotten 70% of the vote that Kamala Harris had gotten, she would have won by about 400 votes from what we can see by the data. And that is something that, one, shows that we need to get out the vote more. More Democrats need to come out voting. We need to be appealing more towards independents and more moderate Republicans, all of it at the same time. I am not advocating for one strategy over the other. We need to absolutely do everything we can to get more politicians elected in rural areas so we can improve the lives of rural people.
But
is really the big motivator.
And we'll get back to that data on Afton. I want to circle back to that again, but
Yes.
Keeping it at a more high level for now, I think it's important to point out that this rural urban divide, as you were kind of hinting at, has become more and more important over time since 2016. So, for example, back, prior to 2000, where you lived, living in a rural place or a city was much less of a determining factor in being able to predict your vote than it is now. So there are a lot of factors that researchers study to see, what influences, or not only what influences a vote, but how well you will be able to predict the way a person is going to vote based on these various factors. These include things like religion, race, gender, and then one of them being whether you live in a rural or urban area. And
Yep.
increasingly more and more, where you live is a much more determining factor of how you are going to vote. There are still things, religion and race still play a more important role than where you live, but where you live has overtaken things like your level of education and your gender in the past decade because of, I think, what you were hinting at earlier or not hinting at, but what you said earlier about the marketing strategy of the Republican side of, you're the quote unquote real American because you're a farmer. And, if you're a farmer, that means you must vote Republican. And that's not, or I guess it doesn't have to be true. That maybe historically has been true because of failures from the Democratic Party to campaign effectively.
Yes. And yes, it's really we've really saw this kind of like two-pronged effect where Democrats not trying nearly as hard as they could have within rural districts, combined with this identity-based, location-based marketing strategy from the Republicans and the MAGA movement as a whole, has resulted in rural districts really just being locked down by the Republicans. And Democratic the institutional Democratic Party structures within rural districts really just being hollowed out because they can't do anything because they can't elect anybody into local offices. All of the campaigning in the world about making your life better doesn't really work if you can't get someone into the office to make your life better. And this identity politics approach, combined with rural democratic institutions being shells of themselves, essentially, has resulted in a very tough situation for rural Democrats and rural liberals and even rural moderates, seeing how extreme the Republican Party's getting, especially on the state level, as we mentioned in our previous episode. It's something that is alarming, but can absolutely be worked on. But it's something we need to acknowledge the problem before we can move on to the solution. And the problem is that a lot of rural voters feel like we're not there for them, and they also feel like the Republican Party represents Americanism more than we do. I don't think that's true. I think we are just as American, if not more, than anybody else, at least in terms of opposing authoritarianism and trying to make as many people's lives better as possible.
But when the Democratic Party doesn't
Yeah.
sell that idea or just defaults to, well, we'll focus on the people in the cities, then you start, even if, the Democratic voters that would never vote Republican in their lives just aren't going to go to the polls then. They're just going to give up and say, well, you're not really fighting for anyone, especially me. So why would I go vote for you? I'm just going to accept that I live in a red state or a red county or a red
Yeah.
area.
Oh, and I've heard that so many times. Just why should I vote? It doesn't even matter. The Republicans are going to win anyways. I'm just going to stay home or I'm going to do whatever. No, I've got work and it's not really worth leaving work because the Republicans are going to win anyways. And that's the dynamic we really have to break. We really have to show rural voters that we want their lives to be better, that we want farmers to be able to make a good living off of their business as a farm. We want a more egalitarian system that results in everybody having a better life. That means that can be anywhere from all the policies that Democrats say, all the way down to just listening to Republican voices more and seeing what they actually want and need on the ground level. And then showing up, being there, showing that if they elect us in, we will not just be the same establishment corpo-style Democrats that we've seen before, that we are actually willing to help rural areas of America, not just the cities and the suburbs.
Well, and here's the thing, too, about the mindset of, well, the Republicans are going to win anyway. And I'll be the first to admit that I used to be one of those people. Like, my vote doesn't matter. What's the point if my candidate isn't going to win anyway? And they're going to lose by a landslide, typically in this area. Is we get stuck in this, well, we don't go vote. So then no one runs for the position because they think that they're not going to have any support. And so then it's just this circular, we never see how many voters are out there that would vote for this, hypothetical Democratic candidate, because the Democratic candidates aren't running because they don't think they're going to get any votes. And it's this vicious cycle of, well, what's the point in running if I'm not going to vote, or if no one's going to vote, and what's the point in voting if I'm not going to win? And we have to, the only way to break out of that mindset is for people to run and then get votes, and then we can watch this movement take place over time. Which to get back to the data you were talking about with Afton Bain and the recent special election for District 7, even looking at the results from that special election compared to the last time we had a House District 7 vote in Robertson County that was not part of a presidential race, because I know, presidential races generally just have more turnout by virtue of them being a presidential race. So even when you compare this special election to the last time we had a District 7 election that was not part of a presidential ballot, we saw a 5 percentage point increase in support for the Democratic Party. So Afton Bain got 5% more of the votes than the Democratic candidate in 2022. And that is with only 1,000 more people showing up to vote for
Yeah.
Afton Bain. I mean, like, that is beatable. Like, I feel like when we talk about percentage points, and this is something you and I were talking about earlier, we lose the context of what those percentage points mean.
Yes.
Afton Bain only lost by less than 16,000 votes. That's 16,000 votes.
That's less than the population of Springfield.
That is less than 2% of the entirety of District 7. So back to what you were saying earlier, if only 70% of the people who voted for Harris came out and voted for Afton Bain, she would have won by about 400.
Yeah.
If every single person who went out and voted for Harris went out and voted for Bain, when you exclude Williamson, Davidson, and Benton counties, because those are the 3 counties in District 7 that there are only partial areas of those counties included. All of the other 11 counties in Robertson County are of the other 11 counties in District 7 encompass the full county. Benton, Davidson, and Williamson, we just have parts of. But so even if you just look at the 11 counties that, are fully incorporated in District 7, had 100% of the voters from those counties that voted for Harris had voted for Afton, she would have won with 7,000 more votes than she would have needed to.
Yes. And that's it. There is hope. This isn't an insurmountable challenge. The percentages make it sound like it's so much worse than it really is. And really, the margins we're talking about at the highest end with Afton Bain are thousands. And then when you go into more local races, it's hundreds, maybe even dozens. I've seen local races in Tennessee and in other states that have finalized down to just a few votes deciding it. Just a few people that decide to get up that day, go to a polling station, press the button for who they wanted, and they were the deciding factor. They mattered. That means you matter. That means your vote really does matter, no matter what the Republicans want you to try to think.
And I do think it's important also to point out that it is a collective effort.
Yes.
Like, for District 7 specifically, Robertson County couldn't have done it on our own. It's not like had all of the people from Robertson County that voted for Harris, had voted for Afton, that Afton would have won. We need the collective effort of all of the people encompassed in District 7, all of the people, across the state of Tennessee. It's not the only way, at least in my opinion, the only way that the Democratic Party can see any change in all of these rural areas is by coming together. It can't be, I can't say that by coming together we'll elect a Democratic candidate for county mayor or anything local specifically to Robertson County. But when looking a little higher scale, at District 7 or our Senate races or, things of kind of that level of leadership, if we all, band together, we have the numbers to flip some of the seats.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Tennessee is going to all of a sudden become a, blue wave, blue state, but there are, we can find these little pockets where it's possible, to flip certain things at certain times. Again, more people show up for presidential elections. So had Afton been on the ballot during a presidential year, some of these numbers may not have been true. And, we may not have been able to flip. But especially in situations like a special election or an election that's maybe not as nationally popular, when we show up to vote, that is our opportunity to flip some of these districts and flip some of these seats.
Yes, and that is how you build power from the ground up, starting with the local areas you can flip, which, by the way, no one is running for mayor in Robertson County as a Democrat. Maybe we should fix that in the future, going on to the whole thread we're on here of we need more people who are opposed to the extremity and this very nationalistic extremity we are seeing from the government, from the top all the way down to the local level. How you stop that is getting people in who believe in making Americans' lives better more than appeasing Trump and his current party apparatus. Because that's really what's going on in Tennessee with the immigration package from Trump all the way down to Governor Lee and Marsha Blackburn. It is the same marching orders. They are all operating as a unit. And how you break that up is by motivating as many people as you can to come out and vote with good, real candidates who want to not sound like a broken drum, to make this a better place for all of us.
And I think maybe just as importantly, or maybe even more importantly, depending on I guess how you look at it, but candidates that are willing to break that narrative of identity politics. Like, we need a Democratic candidate that is willing to say, look, I know I'm running as a Democrat, but really I'm running as a Democrat to not associate myself with, the extremists on the right and this, movement that really it seems most people don't want to get behind, whether you're Republican or a Democrat. So the candidates need to, back to our earlier point, of connecting with the rural community in a way that it almost feels like they've given up on in recent years.
Yes, because the Democratic Party used to have a 50-state strategy where they would try from the top all the way down to the bottom. And we've really given that up for a strategy that favors swing districts, and it favors cities, and it favors suburbs. And while it's a lot more surgical, it also leaves a lot of people, like the voters in Robertson County, feeling left out, feeling like the Democrats don't care about them. They only care about the big, glitzy, rich people in the cities. And that's part of the whole elite, rural, rich, poor divide we're also seeing, where a lot of these rural voters see the Democratic Party as full of a bunch of rich snobs, when that's really not the case. I grew up poor. I grew up in Crossville, Tennessee. I know my accent maybe not have developed much, but I can turn it on a little bit. I'm from this state. I've lived here my whole life. I'm just as much of an American as anybody else, and I'm definitely not an elite. And there are a lot of other people who aren't either. Maybe we can dispel that belief by concentrating more on the places that feel left out, that feel like we have abandoned them. More of that 50-state strategy with more progressive, more populist candidates who are listening to the people. Because that's what populism really means. Everyone's throwing that term around all the time. That means you appeal more towards the people who vote for you than you do special interests or money interests. And unfortunately, that's how Trump built his base. Let's call a spade to spade. He talked directly to him. He said, I will fix all of this for you. I will save you from the decline that I am forecasting. And that worked. The people felt like he was listening to them, that he saw them. Maybe the Democratic Party needs to listen to the rural voters just as much as they listen to other voters. Robertson County, in my opinion, matters just as much as Nashville. It matters just as much as the suburbs. And these people deserve just as much of a good life as anywhere else. And maybe we should run on that. Maybe we should run some more candidates who believe in making people's lives better for the farmers and everybody else. Yeah.
So I guess the long story short is really we need to vote, but it also falls on the Democratic Party and the Democratic candidates to, I hate to use the phrase earn our vote, because that can be a very loaded phrase and come with a lot of weight. But to a certain extent, the only way we break this identity politics of, well, I vote Republican because my parents voted and I've always voted Republican, or I vote Democrat because my parents did and I've always voted Democrat, is we need candidates just in general on either side, really, that are willing to say, forget all that and let's talk about policy. Let's talk about changes that we can actually make to improve our lives. Let's talk about, to your point, what the people want, what the people are looking for in their hometowns, in their home counties. Like, until we have candidates that are running on things like that, rather than you do or you don't support President Trump, things probably aren't going to change a whole lot.
Yeah. When I talk to Republicans around here in Springfield, I find that we mostly want the same things. We want to not have our wallets be broke when we go to a hospital. We want our jobs to pay us enough that we can go home and not have to worry about how much we're eating or not have to worry about whether or not we're going to pay bills. We want to have a life where we have more personal freedom in what we do. Where we disagree is how we get there and who we support to get there. Then the conversation devolves into, oh, well, the Democratic Party doesn't care nothing about me, and at least the Republicans are, trying to talk to me. That's what we got to get past.
But the only way we get past that is when people run for office.
Yes, and when people run for office, and when people here, especially people that do not like what the modern MAGA-fied Republican Party is doing, go to vote for those people. We really need to encourage going and voting.
Yeah, we are in unprecedented times, and not voting. I mean, it's a famous it's a famous quote that from Desmond Tutu, that in situations of injustice, if you are neutral, you've chosen the side of the oppressor.
Yes, not voting is a choice just as much as voting for a candidate. You're choosing whoever wins at the end and their policies. That's really what it boils down to, is functionally within the electoral system we have, not voting is choosing whoever's in the lead.
And in a county like Robertson County, in a state like Tennessee, that is almost certainly always the Republican Party.
Yes. And whether or not it's your intention either, that's a lot of Republican strategy, is trying to bring down vote percentages as much as possible. Not Tennessee, but in Texas, another very red, very rural state, we just saw an election primary where they split, where Republicans and Democrats go and vote instead of having unified polling stations, in order to really just confuse people as to where their polling places were. And they managed to get thousands of Democrats to not vote by doing that, because they went to their original polling place, got told it was somewhere else and they can't vote here. They didn't really know where that somewhere else was, and they went home. And that is just as much of a form of voter suppression as being told you can't vote to begin with. Modern day voter suppression takes modern day forms, unfortunately. And how you break through that is by putting in the extra effort to find where your polling places are, find which candidates you like more than the other candidates. Yes, unfortunately, picking the lesser of the two evils is the name of the game in a lot of places, because at least it keeps your party in enough power that they can vote in someone who isn't the lesser of the two evils.
Well, and that's the whole thing, right? Progress is slow. Change like this does not happen overnight. I mean, like, even thinking about like the civil rights movement, that, as historians and experts have defined it, is, technically, I think it lasted for 13, 14 years, something like that.
Yes.
But who knows how long, little movements were starting to build before that, officially started per, history books. Like, the only way we see that progress is by continually showing up and being persistent and being, frankly, annoying about it if we have to. That is the only way that change is made. And if it takes time, it takes time. But that is something we just have to accept as a voter base, and just make the decision that I'm going to keep pushing through this to get to the outcome that I would like to see.
Yes. Yes, that is the way out of it. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a walk in the park. We may have to sacrifice some days at work to go vote to do so. We may have to sacrifice some free time. We may have to go to some protests that we didn't want to initially go to. We may have to do some organizing that we didn't originally want to go to. But if we want a better United States, we build it in each county, starting here with Robertson County and moving out to District 7, because Robertson County voters can vote in District 7, and just all around the country. focusing on the individual counties and their needs and how we can make their lives better. And if we can spread that through, then we have a much better chance of coming out of this situation as a united, intact country than, well, whatever future the current administration has for us, because from what we can see right now, a lot of bad things are going on very quickly and very fast, and it doesn't seem like they're going to suddenly change into a more humane position anytime soon.
Unless we force them.
Yes, and we force them by getting out,
And voting.
and running for office, getting out, voting, running for office, voting for those people that run for office, really no matter what.
Even if you don't think they're going to win, still going out and making your voice heard and making it known that those opinions are supported.
Yes. Yeah. It's almost something you have to do on principle.
Yeah.
Where you hear the vote and you're like, all right, I'm going to go vote. And I don't really care what the result is afterwards, but I'm going to go vote. That's how I've operated. And from what the data shows, that's how the Democratic Party, especially in rural areas, should operate. And that's currently what I've got.
Well, again, I guess one thing to take away from this whole discussion is if you are a part of the electorate, go vote in any and every election you can.
Yep.
If you are eligible and even slightly interested, please run for office. Again, even if you think you'll lose, just getting the voices and the exposure out there is so impactful and helpful for making progress towards the future.
Yeah. Even if you don't run in your first campaign, you'll build up a small voter base. You'll build up some people that know you. You'll build up some connections. And then when you run again, you'll build up a larger voter base and more people that know you. And you can keep building through each campaign until you eventually get to the point where you can tip the scales.
Exactly.
Like Afton Bain was doing organizing and political activity long before she ran for District 7.
Yep.
And she will be doing so afterwards. And in my opinion, she should keep running over and over again until she eventually nails it. Because that is the time of our moment. That is the way out from what we can see towards really just a better tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, everyone, for watching, for listening. Again, if you missed our episode last week, go back, check it out. Like I said, we went deep dive into that immigration package. Links in the description for all of the important dates and everything I mentioned at the beginning. I'll also try, if I can, find a way to link to all of the election data that we were talking about regarding Harris and Afton and all of those, county level details. So just check out the description for all of that. And thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
Catch you later.